Your eyes will behold the king in his beauty. They will see a land that stretches afar. Hello everyone, this is Gilgamesh, and today we are going to get to the halfway point in Isaiah. We're going to talk about the second half of chapter 33. Now, I just did the first half of this and we left it with this lingering question of who can dwell with the consuming fire? Who among us can dwell with everlasting burnings? We let that question linger in the air there a bit while we waited for this section here to answer it. And we're going to answer it starting here in verse 15. And it says, "He who walks righteously and speaks uprightly, who despises the gain of oppressions, who shakes his hands from holding a bribe, who stops his ears from the hearing of bloodshed, and who shuts his eyes from looking on evil." That's really hard to read a teleprompter when you do that. Yeah. No. Okay. So we have here who walks in righteousness and speaks uprightly. This is a list of ethical attributes that has a catechistic look to it, a question and answer look to it. And there are two different psalms that do a similar thing, including one of my absolute favorites, which is the 24th Psalm. They're asked of the pilgrim who is ascending the Temple Mount these questions, and they have to answer that they meet this criteria. And so we have a very similar look to this here. Who can dwell with everlasting burnings? And we give here the ethical answers of these people who have kept these ethical standards here. They're not involved in bribes. They're not involved in murder. They're not involved in looking on evil, whatever that may mean. And I can't imagine with our modern web what that could be referring to. But yes, there's always been entertainment that is visual that was evil. And so we're saying here that you must meet these ethical standards if you're going to be able to dwell with the consuming fire, if you're going to be able to live through the coming onslaught. Now, the word here for gain that we translate here, the gain of oppressions here, it is almost always used to mean unlawful gain. And then the word oppressions here, it might be better translated as extortions. The word occurs only here and Proverbs 28:16. It's bad stuff, extortions here. So the people who are getting money from extorting others. Now we also have the word bloodshed here. This is the plural of the word blood. And they do this in the Hebrew Bible a fair bit, where the plural of the word blood generally means murder. And so bloodshed works here for this, but it's literally just bloods. And by using that in the plural, we mean blood that has been untimely spilt, the blood that is there from murder, blood that cries out from the ground for justice. So we have here the idea that you do not want to hear the bloodshed, the murder. You don't want to be in on those that are putting together this secret to murder folks. Now, in English, the phrasing here might sound like we're saying that the person is ignoring such things, turning a blind eye to such things, the not wanting to hear it, not wanting to see it, pretending it's not there. That's not what it means. This is clearly that the person will not participate in such things, that they are not wanting to join in on the conspiracies, where they're shutting their ears from the hearing of murder and they're shaking their hands away from taking the bribes. This is saying that these are things that were happening. There were people, probably people who held political power, who were accepting bribes on the back end. They were doing extrajudicial killings, and they also were involved in looking upon things that were evil. And they want none of this. Those that will survive are the people who resist such things. They do not wish to be involved in the corruption of giving money for favors. They do not wish to be involved in unjust killings and harming people, and they do not gain pleasure out of seeing the suffering or exploitation of others. They do not participate in seeing those things and aggrandizing them. This is those who can live in everlasting burnings. We go on here to talk about such people. Verse 16. He will dwell on the heights. His place of defense will be the fortresses of rocks. His bread will be given him. His water will be sure. So this living on the heights is a place of fortified security. We've already said it is where God lives. It is the inaccessible place where he is. So the person who can meet these ethical standards is going to be elevated here to the heights where we said that God resides himself. And this is a place of security. It also is conceivable that this is a bit of a reference to the Temple Mount itself. Now, the word fortresses here, fortresses of the rocks, it is a plural of the word Masada, which is the name of a famous post-biblical Jewish fortress. You may have heard of it. This is that same word. The word means a fortress. Here it's in the plural, Masadot, the fortresses of rocks. And we continue with the blessings for this person. Your eyes will behold the king in his beauty. They will see a land that stretches afar. Well, this is interesting. Obviously here we're talking about an idyllic king, the messianic figure here. This seems to harken back to Isaiah's evocation of the king from chapter 11 and a few elsewhere places in Isaiah where he talks about this ideal king, that those who will be raised up to the heights that will see this great fortress and protection here will also see the king. And they will see a land that stretches afar, meaning that there are no invaders, that they will have a land that is broad and safe. And so this is the promise here. The literal sense of the Hebrew is a land of distances, a land wide. But yes, it's going to be a vast country here that is seen over by this restored Zion. Then we have verse 18 here. Your heart will muse on the terror. Where is he who counted? Where is he who weighed the tribute? Where is he who counted the towers? Now, this where is he who counted? This is an interesting one. Some scholars have thought this is something about a census. That doesn't seem to fit very well. But it seems to be that what the prophet has in mind here is the abundance of buildings and towers that exist in Zion, particularly maybe even an idyllic future Zion. And we actually have a similar usage in Psalm 48:13, go around Zion and circle it, count its towers, which is also this celebration of the triumph over enemies who have attacked Jerusalem. Now, the word here for he who counts, it's actually used twice in this verse. This comes from the word that means scribe, but the root means both to count and also to recount or tell a story. And it's only in context here that we can tell this is probably more an accountant than a scribe or storyteller. And that's largely from the next line, which mentions one who weighs. This is from the word shekel, which is the same root as the word shekel, which is the unit of measure that they would use for a lot of their monetary transactions. There were no coins at this time. But yeah, this is the one who counts out the tribute here, the one who weighs out the tribute. We're talking probably about, in this context, the invading enemy that would be demanding this tribute of them. Where is the one who counts? Where is the one who weighs the tribute? Where is the one who counts up all the towers that are in the building? Somebody who assesses the city for how much money they must pay these conquering invaders. That seems to be what it is referring to here. And we have this person raised on high his heart is thinking about the terror, and he looks out and asks, where are all the people who threatened us? Where are the people who are here to collect all our money? And then we have verse 19. You will see no more the insolent people, the people of an obscure speech that you cannot comprehend, a barbarian tongue that you cannot understand. Now, the word for insolent occurs only here, and insolent is a bit of a guess. The idea of insolent comes from linking it to a root that means to be strong. I don't know that that's the best guess. A more probable guess would be linking it to a word that means to speak a foreign language. And that would fit a bit more precisely with the next two lines. The next line is literally a people too deep of lips to hear. It's kind of what it says. And the word here that I've translated as barbarian is actually close to the word that we conjectured for the first line that means to speak a different language. There's only a one-letter difference between these two words. And the one we had just back in chapter 28 for someone who stutters. And so the idea here of speaking a foreign language was like a person who stutters. It sounds like you can't get the words out or something. It's just incomprehensible. And this goes back to a little bit of the prejudice that people had in the ancient world, that you'll see it a lot in biblical poetry, that the terrifying aspects of the enemy is that they speak this language you can't understand. And not being able to understand what they speak breeds a certain mistrust. Now, I would love to say that we overcame this, but we still have this prejudice, and we see it in modern times as well, that when someone speaks a foreign language, we assume that there are all sorts of things behind it that are nefarious. And they saw it the same way, that these people are coming in and you can't even understand what they're saying, therefore they must be terrible people. And this is some of that same idea here, that there's not going to be these people invading anymore who you can't even understand their language. So we come here to verse 20. Behold Zion, the city of our appointed feasts. Your eyes will see Jerusalem, an untroubled habitation, an immovable tent, whose stakes will never be plucked up, nor will any of its cords be broken. We have Zion here again as the tent, an untroubled habitation, a untroubled navah, habitation, a pasture land, an ideal place, a navah. And we have here that even though at this point Jerusalem was built up with stone houses and the temple was a stone temple, you can take the tent people out of the tents, but you can't take the tent out of the people. They still in their poetry revert back to the idea of the tent imagery. And we've got it here just introduced again, that Zion is this big tent, and tents are held together with stakes into the ground and with ropes or cords that are stretched out tight to keep it all in place. And this is a immovable tent. Now the word immovable only occurs here, and the word has this idea of to pack up or load something onto a beast of burden, like you're breaking camp, that it is a tent that never gets packed up, and immovable is just a nice shorthand for that. But it means here specifically a tent that's not going anywhere. And we have here in verse 21, for there the majesty of the Lord will be for us, a place of rivers, waterways wide of hands, where no galley with oars can go, nor majestic ship can pass. In the desert, they didn't have a lot of water. Zion was particularly dependent upon the Gihon Spring, which is a natural spring that occurs there, probably why the city was built there. But here they are portraying it as a place of just rivers and wide waterways, something that has never existed in Jerusalem. But this will be a great place with all these beautiful waterways, but It's not going to be one where they can row up to it in their galley and their ships. One of the advantages of living inland in the hill country was that you didn't have to worry about sea invaders. And they're saying that while they'll have all these great rivers, it won't be a place that you can get to by ship, because that would mean invaders. And so this is not going to be a place where the invaders can go. No sailing craft can get there. And this was always the idea of the hill country being safe, is chariots didn't work well in hill country. Boats couldn't come up to hill country. A city out in the hill country was much more defensible, which is part of why Jerusalem took so long before the Jews themselves were able to conquer it under David. But that hill country makes it defensible, but it also gives them this dry, arid land, and they're imagining it in this future time with rivers and streams and all this natural supply of water. And so we come to verse 22. For the Lord is our judge. The Lord is our lawgiver. The Lord is our king. He will save us. So we've got here this 4 lines here about the Lord, with the Lord being repeated 3 times in this, a very explicit 3-fold repetition here. And we build up to the final line of he will save us. We have him here in judge, lawgiver, and king. And so now we are particularly associating the Lord himself with this ideal king. And we also say here that he will save us. You could also translate that as he is our salvation, or you could even translate it as he is our savior. Either of those work fine with the way the Hebrew is written there. This is a very nice conclusion, and probably was the ending of this poem. What follows is an interesting nautical-themed metaphor, but it seems disconnected from the above. But it was placed here perhaps because of the earlier statement about ships not being able to reach Zion. And so maybe that's why it is placed here. But this seems like the perfect conclusion here, with this final reference to the Lord is our judge, the Lord is our lawgiver, the Lord is our king, he is our savior. That seems like that is the perfect ending here. But we continue it on here for another verse. And we have this interesting nautical theme here. Your cords hang loose. They cannot hold the mast firm in its place, or keep the sails spread out. Then pray, spoil in abundance will be divided. The lame will plunder the plunder. So the language here in some ways mirrors the language of Zion. Here, the cords, the ropes of the tent, are abandoned, and the sail isn't stretched. Zion, the tent, was immovable. And so the assumption here is that Isaiah is using nautical imagery here, but it is clear that these mighty ships that he's talking about are the opposite of Zion. The Jewish Publication Society, in their recent translations, decided that this verse has been misplaced, or at least the first half of it has been misplaced, and they actually move it to be right after verse 21 to go with that other nautical imagery. And that makes some sense. With it being where it's at, though, I do question if this is intended to be nautical at all, because there are only 2 words that really make this nautical, and that's the word mast and the word for sail. They are also used together in Isaiah 30:17, and there they are not nautical at all. These words are translated as a signal post or a flagpole, and an ensign or a flag instead of a sail. So instead of a mast, it's a flagpole, and instead of a sail, it is a flag. And the word here for ensign, nes, is used particularly frequently by Isaiah in a non-nautical sense. This might just be saying that your ropes or cords, a word that, again, is specifically applied to Zion in the tent imagery, they're going to hang loose, and your signal pole, your flagpole, cannot be made firm or strengthened. This same verb of strengthened is the same verb that is used of Zion's stakes, not here, but later in Isaiah 54:2, it talks about strengthening her stakes. And it's saying that your flag won't unfurl, and the unfurling of the ensign is also a common Isaiah theme. So I have not seen any translation that does not place nautical terms mast and sail here. If you know of any, let me know in the comments. But I couldn't find any that do that. But I also don't see a great justification that this has to mean mast and sail here. This might just mean flagpole and flag, and not really be continuing the nautical metaphor. Especially considering that they were used together by Isaiah just a few chapters back, and that was clearly not nautical terms then. Now, the line here that just doesn't seem to make a lot of sense, then praise, spoil in abundance will be divided. There's a couple of problems with that line, of course. This line contains two words that form part of Isaiah's son's name, Maher Shalal Hashbaz. However, it is not Assyria that is spoiling, but it is the people of Zion who are going to spoil Assyria. This might indicate a reversal on Isaiah's son's name, not talking about a doom that Assyria is going to bring upon Jerusalem, but the doom of Assyria that would be coming soon for attacking Jerusalem. So there are a couple of problems with the verse here. The passive verb will be divided, according to the some Greek editions and the Targum. It should actually be an active verb here, will divide. And the word for pray is odd here. It doesn't seem to work. Based on the Targum, this might be another mix-up of the letters R and D. And if this is the case, rather than pray, it would mean blind. And that would make a nice parallel to the lame in the next line. The word here, in abundance, also has some issues of uncertainty. It probably means something like majority share or the largest share. So this would change it to, then the blind will divide the spoil's largest share. The lame will plunder the plunder. The word here for lame is the same root as the word for Passover. Now, this has always been a bit of an odd thing. The general explanation is that lame people kind of hop as they go, and the Lord hopped over the houses of the Israelites. This explanation for the meaning of the word Passover is not widely agreed upon, but that is one of the traditional ones. But we have here, this verse actually becomes important for understanding the word Pesach, because yes, it here means a lame person, and it's parallel with somebody who is blind. And this is not a terribly common word, but this is one of the places where it shows up here. So if we correct the text there from prey to blind, we have a much nicer translation that makes more sense here, that even those that are thought of as weak and unable to fight, they are going to be the ones who are able to plunder Assyria, that the blind and the lame will be able to take the things of Assyria who thought they were unconquerable. And this goes nicely, and we should also say here that he shall plunder is bazu baz. You can hear the repetition there. This is a classic example of a cognate accusative where the verb and the direct object come from the same root. They love doing that in Hebrew. Most translations don't preserve it, but that is what's saying here, is that the lame will plunder, bazu baz. And we come to verse 24, continuing this idea of blind and lame. And no inhabitant will say, I am sick. The people who dwell there will be forgiven their iniquity. Now, this no inhabitant shall say, I am sick. I think it goes nicely with those last two lines of the blind and the lame. Now, the word for sick here is one that means to become weak. And it was actually used back in Isaiah chapter 14, verse 10, where the spirits of Sheol ask the king of Babylon, have you become weak like us? This is that same word here, weak or sick. And so this may harken back to that idea of that the invading armies, and in that Isaiah 14 it was Babylon, here we're probably talking about Assyria, but the idea that the pompous king, have you become weak like us? Yet among those in Zion, nobody will say, I am weak. Not even the blind and the lame. They will be the ones taking spoil. And that seems to be what we have going on here, is that they are going to have, the weak are going to say, I am strong. And the strange line here, the people who dwell there will be forgiven their iniquity. The word forgiven here is a fairly common word, nasa, which literally means to carry or to be carried off, that their iniquity will be carried or carried away from them. And that's what we mean by forgiven here. Obviously, a great blessing to have the iniquity being forgiven, but it does seem a little out of place in some ways, but that's where we end the first half of Isaiah. We are halfway there. And so I didn't know it'd take me this long to get halfway through Isaiah, but the videos are getting better all the time. I do want to bring up here, though, as we're at this halfway point, a little bit of nonsense that I've found on YouTube. And I don't want to call anyone out particularly, but I've seen this now a couple of places where people are talking about that in the Dead Sea Scrolls, in the Great Isaiah Scroll, there is a break at this point in Isaiah on the actual manuscript, and that this somehow proves that there were two books of Isaiah. And they're trying to come up with the idea that there's an Isaiah and a Deutero-Isaiah. Now, people who have watched my channel a lot know that I don't subscribe to that theory personally, but that is the majority opinion, that there are at least two, possibly three, possibly more Isaiahs that all wrote in the book of Isaiah. There's no physical evidence for that, though. And this idea that the Dead Sea Scrolls somehow show that is complete nonsense. And I have never heard anyone who has taken any serious study of the book of Isaiah that points to that as evidence for a second Isaiah. There is plenty of things they point to, and some of them are very, very valid. I would not dismiss that they're not thinking things through well when they say that there's more than one Isaiah. There's a lot of good reasons to believe that, and it is the majority opinion. But this isn't one of them. What's happening here is very obvious, and I don't know why YouTube has taken on this idea that this is proof of two Isaiahs. There is, at the bottom of chapter 33 in the Isaiah scroll, a blank spot about 3 lines long. And it is right at the point, and remember that we're going right to left on our reading here. It is right at the point where the next column is on a new piece of leather, and you can see where they are sewed together. Now, what we have found is that the second half of Isaiah is written in a very similar but slightly different handwriting and with a couple of different spelling patterns, indicating that it was a different scribe. What obviously is happening here, painfully obviously happening here, is that one scribe took the first half of the book of Isaiah, one scribe took the second half of the book of Isaiah, they made their copy and they sewed them together, and it's amazing there are only 3 blank lines where the one ended and the other one picked up. That's actually really impressive. Now, what's even more impressive is this was before there were chapter divisions. This was before there was any punctuation indicating the end of a verse marker. Yet somehow this point that they designated as the halfway point is still the exact halfway point in our modern scriptures, both by number of chapters, and while I haven't verified it, I've also been told by number of verses. It is the exact halfway point of Isaiah. That's kind of spooky. But there it is, right there in the middle of the book of Isaiah, this gap where we change scribes. So clearly 2 scribes were working on this at the same time, which seems very reasonable. They both took half the book, and then they sewed them together. That makes a lot of sense. This isn't the only spot where things are sewed together. I believe there are 9 different pieces of leather that are sewn together in the Isaiah scroll, but this is the halfway point, and that is what's happening there. Has nothing to do with 1st and 2nd Isaiah, because for one thing, it's in the completely wrong place. People who believe in that believe that the break happens between chapters 39 and 40. And there are a lot of good reasons to believe that it happens there. The text does dramatically shift to a different tone at that point. This isn't the right spot for that. This makes no sense as a theory to support that. And I've never seen anybody that has any academic background propose that at all. So there we are. That's where I'll leave you for this. And I want to say to everybody who's joined me on the first half of this journey, I appreciate it. I look forward to going through the second half of Isaiah with you. It's exciting to get to the halfway point. Please like and subscribe, and shalom.